I'm Fabio Terezinho. It's my pleasure to be here at AVEVA Day Houston with Ron Chandler, Director of Business Development for Orise for oil and gas and chemicals in North America. Thank you, Ron. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Been a while.
It has been a while, that's true. But always good to see you again. And Orise is a company that acquired another system integrator that used to work with AVEVA as well. Can you tell us a little bit about Orise and what you guys do, how you differentiate yourselves in the market?
Sure. So Orise has been around for about 35 years and formerly known as Process Automation Solutions, headquartered out of Germany.
Okay.
One of our large accounts is BASF. We are a roll-up of about 9 or 10 integrators around the world. We're an agnostic supplier of automation, all the way from the PLC level, edge device, all the way up to SAP integration. IPCOS is the name that you might be familiar with. That is a boutique optimization company that worked in advanced control, data historian work, and digital oil field applications. Since we acquired all these system integrators over time, it was our desire to go global and get more integrated, so we've made a decision to rebrand as Orise. So Orise is the roll-up of all these companies, and we go to market in 3 main verticals: energy and chemicals, food and beverage, and pharmaceutical.
Excellent.
So,
and I believe you told me you are beyond 16,000 people now,
1,600.
Right? 1,600.
We have a goal
Okay.
to get to 16,000, but we're not there yet.
In 5 years.
There you go.
Got it.
So again, we're an agnostic supplier of talent to optimize and integrate all the DCS companies, whether it be Emerson, Honeywell, Siemens, ABB. We have a very strong backbone of European-based history, so we're very, very strong in some of the solutions that they bring. From a vertical standpoint, as I mentioned, we've got these 3 main verticals. Historically, we've done quite a bit of pie work specifically in pharma. We probably have 60 engineers that can do pie work in that area, including validation work. And we also have a fairly strong pie team in energy and chemicals. Food and beverage, as you know, is kind of a different application. We have a pretty strong wonderware practice as well.
HMI skid.
And a very good practice based in Asia for those offers.
And what I'm seeing, Ron, I don't know if you agree, but case in point, a lot of consolidation, system integration, right? But in the old days, I saw system integrators more executing the projects, and now I see more and more system integrators taking a position of being consultants for the end users, even before the project is defined or even designed, right? Are more experts in the industry that help end user find areas where they should invest to maximize their return on investment. And you are in business development, so I'm saying our position more than other, you need to be a trusted advisor to our customers. So why Orise in in a broader sense speaking, why Orise with AVEVA, right? When you advocate for AVEVA for your customers, what is the reasons that you put your reputation, Orise reputation on the line, telling customers that using AVEVA is a good option?
Yeah, well, as stated earlier, we are agnostic. So when we do studies, we go in there with a clear slate and determine what is best for the particular situation that customer is, as is, and what could be. And obviously, the portfolio that AVEVA has is very broad and deep and world class. So, especially in the pie space, from a data historian standpoint, market share, the breadth and depth of the product, we more often than not lean heavily towards that suggestion to go forward. So we do have a strong practice of some people that are good at doing these studies, and ultimately they can turn into projects which we execute. Now our key talent and skill set is system integration, but and we also are global, so we can do offshoring. When we execute projects, we have a U.S. team, we have a European team, and we also have a high-value center in India that enables us to deliver solutions that are cost-effective. With that said, we're not a $40 an hour shop. That's not our skill set. We pride ourselves in having some engineers. Many are chemical and petroleum engineers that have deep domain knowledge to solve tough problems in the industry.
Got it.
And with regards to Pi specifically, the power of AF, we have a very strong team that can do some pretty sophisticated data governance and design to ensure that a enterprise-wide project is successful over the long term with regards to data management, scalability, et cetera. And we find that to be very important in the upstream oil and gas business.
And we are in general in what I would consider a traditional industry that historically has taken longer to take on new technologies, new architectures, right? And cloud is not necessarily new. We have been hearing about that for, I would say, over a decade now. But you are within industrial, traditional industry, when we talk broadly about industrial automation, you are probably in one of the most traditional ones in oil and gas, chemical, heavy industry, right? Billions of dollars involved in the projects, huge safety issues, a lot of responsibility in the projects. So simply put, does cloud matter for the projects today, or it's not for the type of projects that you implement today? How do you see cloud changing, if at all, how you deliver value to customers using industrial automation and industrial software today?
You're accurate that our industry's probably not a first mover.
Yeah.
But we do see, with the advances of AI and vendors such as Databricks and Snowflake, a lot of our applications that we are delivering integrate with those solutions. So we definitely see a trend to cloud solutions. But with that said, on-prem is still very, very powerful. And so our consultants will look at an opportunity and determine what's the best architecture for the client.
So sounds like Orise is aligned with AVEVA's vision that it's not on-prems only, so cloud does matter, but it's not cloud only either, is what we call the hybrid solution, right? So use on-prem for what on-prem delivers best value, reliability, real-time control, and use the cloud for what cloud delivers what you cannot achieve on-prem when it comes to global reach, consolidation of information, access to different personas, and so on, AI, in scale, among others, right?
Correct.
Excellent. And do you have real-world stories, real-world examples that you can share with us where you, Orise in general, delivered value to customers leveraging those more cutting-edge technology, hopefully with some software provided and infrastructure provided by AVEVA as well?
We have a team that's evaluating your Connect offer. We have not actively leveraged a project leading with cloud solutions, but we are definitely trending in that direction.
Got it. That's where you see the near future, customers getting the value to bring the data to the cloud and share with different personas.
And it's got to be the appropriate use case, right? So, and I think as the technology matures and the uptake begins,
right,
we'll be right we'll be very interested in participating in that growth.
Excellent. And we'll be here to support you. And Ron, you mentioned AI, right? How do you see, from a practical point of view, AI being used in the type of projects that you develop? What's the use case? What's the real value of AI, if any, to our customers?
I'm not necessarily a domain expert on that. I do see that AI enables projects to be executed more efficiently. With that said, I think we need to be careful to make sure that the data is accurate. And I think that's one of the things that we bring to the table, is the ability to look at a landscape and ensure that the data governance is where it needs to be, to ensure that we deliver a project that is safe, on time, and on budget.
You mentioned AI yourself, right? And AVEVA also believes a lot in AI being used in industrial automation, right? All our offers on-prem and on the cloud have some AI components at this point, and a lot of development, a lot of new features and capabilities being delivered on that. We have very strategic partnerships with companies like Databricks, Microsoft, AWS, Snowflake, and others, ServiceNow, NVIDIA, to bring an ecosystem that supports AI-driven projects. But there is still a lot of questions on the value of AI in our industry and how customers really realize the value of this AI. For you, what are the key important things to keep in mind when you're delivering a project to end users so they can receive the value from those AI-infused solutions?
Right. Well, I think the most important thing is that the data that the AI models use is accurate, contextualized properly, and that can be managed, because AI just to data for data's sake adds no value. So I think that's one of the things that Orise adds to our customers, is our deep industry knowledge and the ability to ensure that the data that is used in AI applications adds value.
So it's not really about ChatGPT, for example, right? It's really about collecting this OT data that we have been dealing with for decades, to be honest, right?
Correct.
But contextualize it in a way that an AI agent can drive actionable information, trustful information from the data. So
Correct.
Garbage in, garbage out. I think what we do together, us from a system and tools point of view, you from a services and industry domain knowledge point of view, is to contextualize this data so it can be accurately used by AI agents and applications to deliver information that customers can actually use to see the value, right?
Correct.
To increase productivity, minimize waste, and increase safety, which is, at the end of the day, what we are trying to deliver, what we deliver actually to customers for decades, just with new technologies today, right?
Correct. So I'll use ChatGPT to write a call report.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd close the loop with it yet.
There you go. And that goes aligned also with our main value proposition, which is, of course, leverage LLM, all those technologies, but use it contextualized with your project, right? So it's not like asking ChatGPT to go to a static database and summarize the response. Is to provide data to the agent that can go to the actual time series data, or even the documents, the manuals, the designs, 1D, 2D, 3D schematics from engineering, using the whole portfolio from AVEVA, from engineering, operations, optimization, and deliver information based on the actual data from that customer, from that project, right? Not generic information available on internet, on Wikipedia, or anything like that. So I think that's just like you mentioned, the contextualization of this data within the project is what delivers real value in those projects in our specific area, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
But it's a learning curve, right? It's 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I'd say, we didn't hear much about AI. Now it's almost impossible to drive in regions like San Francisco and not see a billboard talking about AI, right?
15 years ago, you couldn't get a customer to go to the cloud.
That's true. That's true. I remember going a little bit farther, people saying that Ethernet was not for industrial networks, right? Yeah. Control net, yes, device net, those proprietary networks, but Ethernet is for office only, right? If you go even farther, people saying, oh, Windows will never be industrial automation. Windows is for games, right?
Correct.
And Wonderware proved the whole naysayers absolutely wrong, right?
And the acceleration curve seems to be really increasing.
Amazing, right? If you think about the speed, I was talking to someone from Microsoft, and I hope I don't get the numbers wrong, but it's order of magnitude that phones took 71 years to reach 100 million users. I think internet took 16, Facebook 4.5, ChatGPT 2 months. And I heard from someone else that DeepSeek 36 hours to reach 100 million users, right? So to your point, it's not that it's changing faster than ever, right? So having said that, whenever you need to learn something, a great way to learn is learn from your mistakes. An even better way to learn is to learn from anybody else's mistakes, so you don't pay the price for that. Is there any mistakes that you learned in your career? Could be in AI, could be in the past, but something that whoever is watching this can learn from your experience and say, that's a lesson learned, that makes sense, then I will not fall in this trap when I'm trying to evolve and deliver value to my customers in productive projects.
Too many to mention.
One would be good.
I think with any kind of project or initiative, rigorous planning and analysis is important. Mm-hmm. In the old days, you used to see people try and do big bangs and eat the whole elephant. I think data proves that need to be a little more rational and programmatic in these initiatives. Look for a quick win, potentially, with a use case. And use cases are overused words because half the time use cases end up on the shelf. But look at something that delivers a quantifiable return on investment. And then I think there's an opportunity to add a lot of value to organizations.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's especially important to younger engineers. I remember when I was a younger engineer learning ladder to write PLC programs and so on. My first project was a disaster, and you made me think of my first boss, and he told me, you know what, you should not do like Nike when you develop projects, right? Do not just do it. Have to stop, learn about the process, learn about the system, think about it. The last thing you do is codify, right? And by the way, that's the easy part. The hard part is to understand what needs to be done, think about that, and think about the value that you are delivering before you write the first line of code, whatever system or technology you're using. So I think that's I wish I had heard this advice before that project. I would not fail so miserably on the first one, but I learned. Houston, AVEVA Day, energy. What's your final message for customers, especially in the energy segment? We hear about sustainability, we hear about technology, we hear about AI, cloud systems, ROI, competition, uncertainty on the economic landscape in macro, micro cosmos. So there is no lack of challenges, right? Correct. So from Ron Chandler, working in this industry for probably 40 years, I would guess 30, but 40 puts you ahead of me. What's your final message to customers in this particular industry today? What they should be looking for when they're deciding where to invest their hard-earned dollars or euros or whatever it is in automation projects?
I continue to focus on data quality. because at the end of the day, without accurate data and managing that data appropriately, you run the risk of having a failed project. And that's the fundamental foundation has to be right in order to build a house.
Got it.
And I don't think that'll ever change.
I completely agree. And to achieve that, you need industrial systems designed to provide contextualization quality on the OT data, which is exactly what AVEVA does on-prem and with Connect on the cloud. And you need industry experts capable to configure those systems and deploy those systems so you transform this data into meaningful, actionable information. So, love your answer. Always a pleasure talking to you, Don.
All right, buddy.
Thanks for your time.
All right.
Appreciate it.